Welcome back to Bab's Honda Repair. Today we have this EG Civic in here and we're going to be reinstalling the B series transmission. If you need to know how to take the transmission out, there's another video on my channel on how to remove the transmission from this particular car. Also, we installed another differential into the car. So if you need to know how to install LSD into your B series transmission, also be sure to check out the channel because there's a video on that. Stay tuned, guys, and we're gonna get this swapped back in. All right, so now we got the new clutch installed, we can get the transmission back into the car and set the car down and get this transmission installed. I've left the mount here loose just so I have some wiggle room with it. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is just slide the transmission kind of where it needs to be under here and then set the car down. All right, so now, like I said, I got the clutch installed, I got the transmission. I'm just gonna pick it up and put it in place. You can use a jack or something to pick it up if you need to, or the engine hoist if you have that. I have an engine hoist here, I just don't feel like dealing with it. I'll just pick it up and put it where it needs to be. All right, so I had it on there, but I saw that the there's no alignment dowels, so I'm not going to put it back together like that. So I'm going to grab some alignment dowels real quick and get them put on. All right, so I got a couple alignment dowels. So I put the alignment dowels on the transmission. You can see one there, and there's one over there. All right. Now, we'll give this another go. I've got it up, I got one bolt started just to hold it in place. Alright, now we can install a couple more bolts and then we can lift it up into place. Alright, so now we got to put the bell housing bolts in. There's one right here. Alright, I got one more. That's right down here. Alright, and these are 17s. Now we can get our floor jack and lift it up into place. It's not all the way tight, but it's good enough that we can get it lifted up and get this transmission mount in. All right, remember I left that transmission mount loose. Gives a little play. I'm not going to tighten that one yet either, just because I want to get the rest of the bell housing bolts done and make sure that we've got all the play out, and then we can tighten this, then tighten this. All right, so before I tighten the rest of the top of the bell housing bolts, I want to go and do the T-bracket. So getting the rear T-bracket on can be a little tricky if you've never done it before, because a lot of times these bolt holes here aren't going to line up. Which they actually did in this case, at least that one did. And then that one did too. Surprising. Usually what I have to do is take a floor jack and put under it and lift it up to where it basically pivots it on this top bolt to where you can get these in. So, surprisingly, they went right together though. So 17, 19. All right, I guess while we're down here, we might as well go ahead and knock out some more of this stuff down here. So go ahead and put our shift linkage back on. So this one just goes here. And this one has an aftermarket bushing. So if it didn't have this bushing, you would have a flat washer. And then your linkage, and then it would have the concave washer. So it actually does have the concave washer, right? I've seen people get away without doing the concave washer and put like a big flat washer on it. I mean, I guess if that works, it works, right? It's 12 millimeter, and then we'll put our pin in here. Snug that down. Last but not least, we got to put the pin in here. So one a lot of people refer to as a bitch pin, right? I'll line our hole up. I like to hold it with a pair of needle nose so that I don't smash my hand. All right. Simple as that. It's supposed to have a ring that goes over it. It didn't have a ring when I took it off, and I don't have one to put back on it, but the pin's not going to just fall out. If it does, you get other problems. I guess next we'll install our half shaft. It slides in here, it goes into the transmission. All right, and it bolts up here with the 3 14 millimeter shoulder bolts, like this. All right, and I'll snug those down. So now I'm going to tighten this bell housing bolt here. It's a 17 millimeter. I gave it the dibble wobbler. I guess since we're down here, we'll just go ahead and finish up everything on the bottom side. So I'll go ahead and throw the axles in. That way, once we get to the top, we just knock out everything we got to do up there. All right, so we'll go ahead and throw all this side back together. I got my axle here. And so I got to put this up on the half shaft. Just slide it up in there and get it started. And then got it seated. All right. And they got all this mess in here. They had zip ties holding the brake line up because they didn't have the brake line properly routed. So what I want to do is disconnect this caliper and untwist that hose real quick. A few extra steps, but I'm trying to do it right. All right, now I'll go ahead and put the axle in and start my ball joint here. Get my brake line where it's properly supposed to be. Go ahead and start our castle nut on the ball joint. Start our axle nut. All right, and then we put our fork back in. All right, and there's a little tab on the back of the shock that goes into that fork and holds it into place. And then we have our 14 goes on top of the fork. And then we're going to have to pick up the whole assembly here, the whole spindle, to get our bottom on. Let down on it before you tighten that top bolt though, it'll take the fork back out of it, and it's not what I was after. Off camera, I went ahead and tightened my lower bolt here. I tightened my ball joint, all right, and I put a cotter pin in it. I tightened my axle nut and staked it with a chisel. All right, and I got all the brake line in place. Yeah, so this side's done. Now I'm gonna do the same for the other side. All right, so we got the axle nut on and staked. We gotta tighten those down. We got our fork in, axle in. We got castle nut with a cotter pin, so good here. All right, so now we'll get the wheels thrown back on. So now that everything's done on the bottom side, we can move back up to the top here, and we can get all our bell housing bolts, the 3 remaining, tight. So I've got one right up here. There's one right down here by where the shift fork is, or the clutch fork rather. And there's one right back here. Got to tighten the 3 on our mount. Different socket for that. Have to use a wrench on that one because of the way the mount is on there. This is 17. Alright, got all those tight. And then we're going to tighten this bolt here. Factory, it would have a nut on the back side here, but this one doesn't, so they had another nut on here. And plug in our speed sensor. Now we'll install the starter. And so the starter has a long bolt and a short bolt up here. So it goes in there like this, kind of at this angle. So the one on the bottom is long. And then the top bolt is just a shorter 14, kind of like this. It's about, I don't know, 2.5 inches or so. Alright. And then we'll just use electric ratchet and run those down. Alright. We can hook up our signal wiring for the starter. Alright, and then here's our power wire for the starter. We'll get a different nut because this one, the washer's off of it. Alright, so I just got another nut out of my bin. It's a 12mm. And we'll hook up our reverse light wire. And we have to reinstall our slave cylinder. Alright, and we have two little 12mm bolts that holds the slave cylinder onto the block. Actually, it'd be onto the transmission, but tight quarters down in there. We have two 10mm bolts that hold on the bracket for the slave line here on top. If you have a S4C transmission, like a EM1, the slave cylinder line bracket's going to be on the back of the engine, not on the front like this. We got an Integra. It's going to be up front. I don't know what they got going on with some of this wiring in here. So now we got to put fluid in the transmission, and then we'll put the intake on. It's just easier to do the fluid without the intake in the way. Alright, so the way you put fluid in is there's a fill plug right here on the side of the transmission. It's almost directly behind the axle. Alright, it's 17mm, you take that out, use a transfer pump such as this, and you'll use the transfer pump to pump 2 quarts of transmission fluid over into the transmission if it's empty, such as this one. 2 quarts. Alright, so I just got the drain plug out, and that's what it looks like. 17mm head, and it has a washer on it. Alright. The way the transfer pump works, take one hose and put it into the transmission, and the other hose goes into the fluid bottle. So I just got some fresh MTF in here, and you'll see it comes up through this and it shoots it back out this. Alright, so we've got both quarts into the transmission, and the fluid is starting to drip out. So therefore we know it's full. And then we just put our plug back in and snug it down. All right. That's tight. We can put our intake pipe back on. Sorry about that. As I was saying though, put the intake pipe back on, and we'll use an 8mm nut driver and tighten down the clamp. That's back where it was. Now we'll put our battery cable back on. All right, and there's a couple other small things on here that I want to address that wasn't really customer request, but such as there's no bolt in this strut bar. Don't want to get a bolt for that, and then I gotta put like the clamp back on here, just little stuff like that. So I'm gonna knock all that out real quick, and we're gonna see if it'll start up. Now we've successfully reinstalled the transmission into the 95 Honda Civic. And now I know that you can do this at your house, in your garage, in your driveway, with some simple know-how and a few tools. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you check out the other videos on this car. And as always, I would appreciate you if you give me a like on the video, comment, let me know what you think about the video, and also be sure to subscribe so that you can see future DIY Honda repair videos that I post. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you in the future. Peace. I just noticed this tag. That's great.